The clock on the street hit 8 o'clock a.m. sharp. Cars were honking. People rushed down the sidewalks. The city was alive with noise. But Jamal Reed was running. His shirt was sweaty. His shoes were old. His backpack bounced as he moved fast through the crowd. He was late. Again. And he knew what that meant. Jamal worked as a janitor at Brentwood Industries, one of the biggest tech companies in the city. He was a quiet man. Kind. Always helpful. But today, no one cared about that. All they would see was the time. 8 o'clock a.m. And Jamal was supposed to be there at 7:30. 30 minutes earlier, Jamal had been walking to work as always. But on that day, something strange happened. He had heard a loud crash near the bridge. People were screaming. Without thinking, Jamal ran toward the sound. A car had hit a tree. It was on fire. Smoke was rising. A man inside was trapped. Others just stood there, scared to move. But Jamal didn't wait. He dropped his bag, took off his jacket, and rushed to the car. The door was stuck. Flames were climbing the seats. Jamal used a rock to break the window. He pulled the man out, dragging him away just before the car exploded. The man was burned, unconscious, but alive. Jamal checked his pulse. He was breathing. Sirens were coming. But Jamal didn't stay. He didn't wait to be thanked. He just picked up his bag and started running to work. Now, at 8:01, he reached the front of Brentwood Industries. He wiped his face and tried to fix his shirt. He walked in quietly. The lobby was full of workers in clean suits and shiny shoes. They all turned when they saw him and whispered, "There he is, late again. Probably stopped for coffee. He's useless." Jamal kept walking, head down. He had done something brave this morning, but they would never know. Mr. Collin, the floor supervisor, stood near the elevator. His arms were crossed. His face was cold. "You're late, Reed," he said sharply. Jamal opened his mouth to speak, but stopped. What would he say? That he saved a stranger from a burning car? No one would believe him. "I'm sorry, sir," he said softly. "Sorry isn't good enough," Collin snapped. "You've been warned 3 times. Jamal didn't answer. He had always followed orders, always did his job well. But being late 3 times was enough for them. "I want your badge," Collin said. "You're fired." The words hit Jamal like a punch. Fired. No warning, no questions. Just like that. He took off his ID badge slowly, put it in Collin's hand, and walked away. As he stepped outside, the city noise felt louder. He sat on a bench near the building, breathing hard. He had no job now, no money coming in, and no one knew the real reason he was late. But Jamal didn't cry. He just sat there quietly, like he had learned to do all his life. Meanwhile, across the city in a hospital room, Elliot Grant, a billionaire tech investor, lay unconscious. Doctors were working fast to treat his burns. His assistant stood at his side. "What happened?" she asked the paramedic. "He crashed near the bridge," he said. "Someone pulled him out. No name. Just left." The assistant frowned. "We need to find that person. Mr. Grant owes him his life." Back outside Brentwood, Jamal stood up and walked away from the company for the last time. No one clapped. No one said thank you. All they saw was a man who was late. They didn't know he had just saved one of the richest men in the city. But the truth was coming. The hospital room was quiet. Machines beeped slowly. A heart monitor blinked green. On the bed lay Elliot Grant, a powerful man in the business world. His face was pale. Bandages covered his hands and arms. He had been pulled from a burning car. Now, everyone wanted to know who had saved him. His assistant, Clara, stood by his side, holding a small plastic bag. Inside it were a few burned items, a melted phone, some coins, and a half-burnt wallet. She opened it carefully. Most of it was black and scorched, but there was one thing inside. A badge. It was partly damaged, but one word could still be read clearly. Brentwood. Clara looked at the name printed under the photo, but it was faded. Only a few letters were visible. Mallory. Jamal. "Maybe," she whispered. She quickly took out her phone and searched online. Brentwood Industries. Staff. Janitor. Jamal? She found a photo in an old employee list. The image was small and blurry, but it could be him. She stood up, heart racing. We might have found the man, she told the nurse. The one who saved Mr. Grant. Across the city, Jamal was walking down a quiet street. He didn't go home right away after being fired. He needed air. He needed time to think. His job was gone, and he hadn't told anyone, not even his sister, about what happened near the bridge. He reached a small park and sat on a bench. A child dropped her toy nearby. Jamal picked it up and gave it back with a smile. The mother thanked him. He nodded and looked away. No one knew what he had done, and maybe that was okay. But deep down, a small part of him wished someone did. Back at Brentwood Industries, Clara arrived at the front desk. She showed the badge to the receptionist. "This man works here?" she asked. The receptionist checked her computer. "Not anymore. He was fired this morning." Clara blinked. "Fired? Why?" The woman gave a careless shrug. "He was late. Do you know where he lives?" "I can't give that out. Company policy." Clara's voice turned sharp. "This man saved a billionaire's life. Do you really want to hide that?" The woman paused. Her face changed. Then she leaned closer and whispered, "Try Maple Street, apartment 6C. That evening, Jamal returned home. The small apartment was quiet. His sister Maya was cooking. He didn't say anything about the job. He just smiled and helped her cut vegetables. "You okay?" Maya asked. "Yeah, just tired." He didn't want her to worry. He never did. Meanwhile, Clara sat at her desk, writing an email. Subject: urgent. Seeking identity of hero. She attached the picture of the burnt badge and wrote, "This man saved the life of Elliot Grant. If anyone knows who he is, please reply. A reward will be given." She sent the message to news stations, blogs, and social media. Then she waited. The next day, something unexpected happened. A video was posted online. A blurry street camera near the bridge had captured the moment of the crash. It showed the car hitting the tree. Then, a man running toward the fire, pulling someone out, dragging him away just before the car exploded. The image was dark, but you could see the hero's outline. You could see the courage. The video spread fast. People started calling him the unknown hero. Some said he was homeless. Some said he was a firefighter. But no one knew his name for sure. Clara watched the video over and over. She knew it was the same man whose badge she had found. "Where are you?" she whispered. "We need to find you." At the same time, in a small corner store, Jamal saw something on the TV above the counter. "Breaking in years. Unknown man saves billionaire's life." He froze. The video showed the crash, the fire, and then him, running into danger. The cashier looked at the screen. "Man, that guy's brave." Jamal quietly picked up his groceries, paid, and left. He didn't want attention. He didn't want a reward. He just did what was right. But now, the world was watching, and the truth was getting closer. It was morning again. Jamal sat by the window, looking out at the street. Cars passed by, people walked to work, and children waited for the school bus. Everything looked normal. But inside Jamal's heart, nothing felt normal. His photo, his shadow really, was now all over the internet. Everyone was searching for him, not to arrest him, not to blame him, but to thank him. In one video, news reporters showed the burned wallet. Inside this damaged wallet, a badge was found. The anchor said it belonged to someone from Brentwood Industries. The letters Jamal Ray were still clear. Jamal turned off the TV. He felt nervous. He didn't want the spotlight. He didn't want cameras outside his home. He didn't want interviews. He had saved a man's life because it was the right thing to do, not because he wanted fame. But the city didn't care about his silence. They wanted their hero. Across town, Clara was getting phone calls every 5 minutes. One reporter said, "We think he lives in Maple Street Apartments." Another said, We have an old photo of a janitor named Jamal Reed. Could that be him? Clara checked the name again. Yes, Jamal Reed. She wrote it down and whispered, now we just need to find him. At Brentwood Industries, things were different now. Employees who once mocked Jamal were whispering his name with guilt. He saved Elliot Grant, one asked. And we fired him, another said, looking ashamed. Even Mr. Cullen, the supervisor, watched the news with a stiff face. He couldn't believe it. The man he fired for being 30 minutes late had risked his life for a stranger. And not just any stranger, a billionaire. That afternoon, Clara stood outside Maple Street Apartments. She held the burnt wallet in her hand. She knocked on the door of apartment 6C. No answer. She knocked again. Finally, the door opened slowly. Jamal stood there, quiet, calm, tired. Their eyes met. He looked down at her hands and saw the wallet. Clara smiled. You saved him, she said softly. Jamal didn't answer. She continued, you saved Elliot Grant. You pulled him out of the fire. Still, he said nothing, but his eyes showed surprise and sadness. I'm not here to put you on TV, she said gently. I just want you to know. He's alive because of you. Jamal looked at her. Is he okay? He asked. Clara nodded. He's getting better. He keeps asking who saved him. Jamal stepped outside. I didn't do it for a reward. I know, she said. He sighed. I just didn't want him to die. Clara paused, then smiled. Would you come see him? He wants to meet the man who gave him a second chance. Jamal didn't answer right away. But deep inside, he felt something stir. Maybe it was time to be seen. Meanwhile, social media was going wild. Photos of Jamal were finally found. Old pictures from company newsletters and staff events. People were shocked. He worked at Brentwood. They fired him for being late. He's the man in the video? Everyone was talking. The next morning, Clara brought Jamal to the hospital. Reporters waited outside, but Clara used a back door. Inside, Jamal stood quietly by the bed. Elliot Grant opened his eyes slowly. He stared at the man beside him. His voice was weak, but clear. You pulled me out? Jamal nodded once. Yes, sir. Elliot reached out and took his hand. Thank you, he said. You didn't just save me. You saved a father, a husband, a company. You saved everything I built. Jamal looked down, embarrassed. Anyone would have done it. Elliot shook his head. No, most people stood and watched. You ran into the fire. There was silence for a few seconds. Then Elliot said something that changed everything. I want to help you now. Elliot's words stayed in Jamal's heart. I want to help you now. But Jamal didn't know how to reply. He had never been in this kind of moment. A billionaire thanking him. A powerful man offering him help. He looked at Elliot's hand resting on the hospital bed. Jamal nodded slowly. You don't owe me anything, sir. But Elliot smiled. No, Jamal. I do. And I'm not doing it out of guilt. I'm doing it because the world needs to see people like you, real heroes. Jamal stood there in silence. No one had ever called him that before. Hero. Later that evening, Clara walked Jamal outside the hospital. The sky was orange with the setting sun. You really don't want to be on the news? She asked kindly. Jamal shook his head. I'm not good with cameras. Clara smiled. You're good with courage. That's more rare. Jamal chuckled a little. It was the first time he smiled in days. But while some people were cheering for Jamal, others at Brentwood Industries were starting to panic. Inside the office building, the HR manager was yelling on the phone. You fired the man who saved Elliot Grant. A voice shouted on the line. It was Elliot's lawyer. Yes, but he was late, and we didn't know. The HR manager stuttered. The lawyer interrupted. Cancel his termination. Now. Mr. Cullen, the same supervisor who laughed at Jamal before, sat quietly at his desk, wiping sweat from his forehead. He remembered how he threw Jamal's badge on the floor. How he told him, you people are always late. And now, the man he humiliated was a city hero. The next morning, A black car stopped in front of Jamal's apartment. Clara stepped out and handed Jamal a small envelope. "What's this?" he asked. She smiled. "An offer." Jamal opened the envelope. Inside was a letter on keen white paper with Elliot Grant's signature at the bottom. Jamal Reed is invited to rejoin Brentwood Industries, not as a janitor, but as a security and safety advisor. Full salary, benefits, and office space. Jamal stared at it. This can't be real." Clara nodded. "It is. Elliot wants you to make sure safety rules are followed, and that people like you are respected." Jamal held the letter tightly. It felt unreal. From being fired to being offered a leadership job. When Jamal returned to the Brentwood building, the whole office turned quiet. Everyone stared. Some whispered. Some lowered their heads in shame. Jamal walked through the hallway, not as a janitor, but as a man with purpose. He passed the cleaning closet where he used to change clothes. He walked by the security desk where he had once waited in the cold, and then he reached the elevator. It took him to the 5th floor, where the managers worked. Inside a small room, a new nameplate had been placed on the desk. "Mr. Jamal Reed, Safety Advisor." Jamal looked around the room. A window, a desk, a computer, a phone, his office. He touched the desk gently, as if checking if it was real. Then he sat down and smiled. Back downstairs, Mr. Collin was called into the HR office. The HR manager looked serious. "Mr. Grant knows everything. About how you spoke to Jamal. About how you fired him." Colin's hands shook. "It was just a warning. He was late." "You're suspended until further notice," the manager said coldly. "Clear your desk." Outside, people gathered in front of the Brentwood building. Reporters, camera crews, supporters. They were waiting to meet the man in the video. Jamal stood at the main entrance, wearing a suit for the first time. He looked nervous, but Clara whispered beside him, "You've already faced fire. This is just light." He stepped forward. People clapped. Cameras flashed. Some chanted his name. And Jamal, for the first time, stood tall, not as a cleaner, not as a man ignored, but as someone who mattered. The office was quiet. Jamal sat behind his new desk, wearing a clean shirt and tie. He looked at the safety reports on his computer screen. It still felt strange, sitting where the managers used to sit, where they once ignored him. Just 1 week ago, people didn't even look at him. Now they knocked on his door and called him sir. A soft knock came. It was Mr. Collin, the man who fired him. He stood in the doorway, holding his hat in both hands. Jamal looked up, calm but firm. "Can I help you?" Mr. Collin cleared his throat. Maybe. I came to talk." Jamal leaned back in his chair. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then Mr. Collin walked in slowly. His voice was lower than usual. "I wanted to say, I was wrong." Jamal raised one eyebrow. Mr. Collin looked ashamed. "The day you were late, I didn't ask why. I just assumed the worst." "You did more than that," Jamal said softly. "You laughed. You mocked me in front of everyone." Mr. Collin nodded. "Yes, and I regret that." He paused, then added, "If I had known what you did that morning, that you saved someone's life, you would have treated me better?" Jamal asked. Mr. Collin looked down. "Yes." Jamal shook his head slowly. "People should be treated with respect even when you don't know their story." That hit hard. Mr. Collin nodded again, eyes wet. "You're right." He stood quietly, then said, "I'm sorry, Jamal. Truly." Jamal looked at him for a long moment, then gave a small nod. "Thank you." Outside the room, Clara had been listening. She smiled to herself. Change was happening. Real change. Later that afternoon, Jamal went down to the janitor's room. The place where he once changed clothes. The place where others joked about him. He saw 2 young workers, James and Theo, sitting on a bench, looking nervous. They quickly stood up when they saw him. Mr. Reed," James stammered. "We didn't know you were coming down." Jamal smiled. "Relax. I used to sit right there, just like you." They looked surprised. Theo asked, "Is it true, sir? You pulled Mr. Grant from the fire?" Jamal nodded. "Yeah." Both boys looked amazed. "But you never told anyone?" James asked. Jamal shrugged. "Wasn't doing it to be famous." Then he looked at them seriously. "Let me give you advice. Always do the right thing, even if no one's watching. It comes back to you in ways you never expect." They nodded slowly, like students learning their first real lesson. Meanwhile, Elliot Grant was recovering fast. He told his assistant, "Set up a press event. I want the world to know Jamal's full story, not the burned wallet version, the truth." On the day of the event, reporters filled the hall. Jamal stood by Elliot's side. The cameras rolled. Elliot spoke first. "Ladies and gentlemen, I wouldn't be alive if not for this man, Jamal Reed. He saved my life. But that's only part of the story." He paused and looked at Jamal. He was working for our company. He was fired, unfairly. But instead of turning bitter, he risked everything to help a stranger. That stranger was me. The crowd clapped. Jamal stepped forward. He cleared his throat. "I don't need praise. I just hope people learn something from what happened. Kindness and respect should never depend on job titles or skin color. We're all humans, and all of us matter." People in the audience wiped tears from their eyes. Reporters nodded. Cameras kept flashing. It was no longer just about one man. It was about changing hearts. That evening, Jamal went home to his small apartment. But when he walked in, he found a surprise. A letter on his kitchen table, with a key beside it. He opened the envelope. It was from Elliot. "Dear Jamal, you gave me my life. Please accept this small gift. A house, closer to your new job, fully paid. You earned more than respect. You earned peace. Elliot Grant." Jamal stared at the key, then sat down slowly, and for the first time in years, he cried. Not from pain, not from sadness, but from something new. Hope. The sky was soft blue, and the sun shone gently over the hills. Jamal stood at the gate of the new house. It looked like something from a movie. White walls, a small garden, and wide glass windows that showed the view of the city below. He held the key in his hand, still not believing this was real. This was not just a house. It was a second chance. When he opened the door, the smell of fresh paint and new furniture welcomed him. The floors were clean, the curtains were soft cream, and everything inside felt peaceful. For a moment, Jamal just stood in the middle of the living room silent. He placed the key on the counter and sat down on the couch. He closed his eyes and let out a deep breath. He remembered the tiny room he used to sleep in, the loud neighbors, the leaky roof. Now, he was here, and he didn't have to fight every single day just to feel safe. Later that evening, Clara visited. She brought flowers and a small cake. "Housewarming gift," she smiled. Jamal smiled back. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," she said. "This place suits you." They walked through the house together. She looked around and said softly, "I hope this house gives you rest. You've earned it." Jamal nodded. "But I don't want to stop working. I want to keep helping people, especially people like me." Clara's eyes lit up. "That's exactly what Elliot hoped you'd say." The next day, Jamal was back in his office. But this time, he wasn't just checking safety reports. He called a meeting with HR and management. "I want to start a program," he said. "A program?" the manager asked. "Yes," Jamal replied. "For workers who feel unseen. For those in low positions who are often ignored. I want to train them, support them, and give them a voice." The room went silent. Then the HR director said, "That is actually a brilliant idea." Weeks passed. Jamal's program was launched under the name Stand Tall Initiative. Flyers were put up in every break room. Workers signed up quickly: cleaners, security guards, drivers. They came to Jamal's sessions. He listened to them. He gave advice. He made sure their complaints were heard. And slowly, something beautiful started happening inside Brentwood Industries. Respect grew. One afternoon, Jamal got a letter in the mail. It had no name on the envelope, just the words, "Thank you." Inside was a note. "Dear Mr. Reed, I was thinking of quitting. I thought no one cared about people like me. But your story gave me hope. I joined your program. I'm still here because of you. Jamal folded the letter gently. He placed it in his drawer beside Elliot's thank you card. That drawer was becoming his treasure box. But not everything was peaceful. One day, as Jamal walked through the hallway, a man bumped into him on purpose. It was a former employee who didn't like the changes. You think you're better than us now? The man said coldly. Jamal didn't get angry. He looked him in the eye and said, No, I think I'm better than I used to be, and I want others to feel that too. The man had no answer. He just walked away. That evening, Jamal visited the small restaurant near his old apartment. The owner, Mr. Barry, smiled wide. Look who we have here, Mr. Big Time. Jamal laughed. Still making the best chicken in town. Always, Barry said proudly. They sat and talked like old friends. Barry leaned forward. You know, Jamal, I've always knew you had something in you. The world just took too long to see it. Jamal nodded. It saw it when it mattered most. Back at home, Jamal stood by the window, looking at the city lights. He held a photo in his hand. It was from the hospital, him and Elliot, both smiling. He placed the photo on a small shelf, next to a candle. As he lit it, he whispered, Thank you for trusting me. In that quiet moment, the house on the hill wasn't just a home. It was a symbol, a reminder that even the most forgotten person can rise. And sometimes, the greatest strength is not in power, but in kindness, courage, and doing what's right. 1 year had passed. Jamal stood on the big stage in front of hundreds of people. Behind him, a large banner read, Annual Stand Tall Celebration. All the seats were full. Workers, managers, guests, even Elliot Grant sat in the front row, smiling proudly. Jamal wore a simple suit. No fancy watch, no flashy shoes. Just like always, calm, respectful, and strong. He took a deep breath and stepped to the microphone. Good evening, everyone, he began. The room went quiet. 1 year ago, I was just a name on a worker list. I cleaned floors. I fixed machines. I did what I could to survive. He paused. And then one morning, I got fired. A few people looked at each other surprised. But that same morning, he continued, I also pulled a man from a burning car. That man changed my life. But more than that, he believed in me. He looked at Elliot, who nodded. Jamal smiled softly. And today I stand here, not because I'm better than anyone, but because I was given a chance. And now, I give chances to others. The room clapped. Tears filled a few eyes. After the event, people came up to Jamal, shaking his hand, taking pictures, saying thank you. One woman, a cleaner named Maria, hugged him and said, You made me feel seen for the first time. A young guard told him, Sir, your story gave me the strength to speak up. Jamal simply nodded to each one, holding back his own emotions. The next morning, Jamal walked through the factory. He stopped to greet every worker, calling them by name. He remembered what it felt like to be invisible. Morning, Theo. Hey, James, how's your daughter? He didn't sit in his office that day. He worked beside the others, lifting boxes, checking wires, helping with tasks. Some managers watched from afar. One whispered, He's more respected than any CEO I've seen. Later that week, Elliot invited Jamal to his home. They sat outside on the patio, overlooking the hills. You've done something powerful, Elliot said. I just treated people the way I wanted to be treated, Jamal replied. Elliot smiled. That's leadership. He handed Jamal an envelope. What's this? Jamal asked. An offer, Elliot said. I want you to take over my position next year. I'm retiring. I need someone who leads with heart. Jamal froze. Me? CEO? Yes, Elliot said. You've earned it. Jamal opened the envelope. Inside was a letter and a card. On the card, it said, From fire to founder, your story continues. For a long moment, Jamal didn't speak. Then he looked up. Only if I can keep the Stand Tall program growing. Elliot smiled wide. That's exactly why I chose you. A few days later, Jamal visited his old neighborhood. He walked past the small store, the broken sidewalk, and the apartment where he once lived. Kids played in the street. One boy stared at him. "Are you the guy from TV?" the boy asked. Jamal knelt down. "Maybe, but I was once just like you." The boy's eyes lit up. "You were poor too." Jamal nodded. "Yes, but I believed I could change my life, and I worked hard." The boy smiled. "I want to be like you one day." "You can," Jamal said. "Just never give up." That night, Jamal stood in his kitchen. He looked around the quiet house. He picked up the same wallet he had carried the day of the fire. Burned, torn, but still with him. He kept it as a reminder of where he came from, of the fire, of the moment everything changed. He sat on the porch, watching the stars. His phone buzzed. A message from Clara. "You changed more than a company, Jamal. You changed lives." He smiled and typed back. It wasn't just me. It was all of us standing tall together. And in that quiet moment, under the dark sky full of stars, the man who was once fired and forgotten now stood as a symbol of hope. Because sometimes the world tries to push you down, but when you stand tall, you rise higher than anyone expected.